Hello and welcome to the Live Series podcast, where I bring to you some of the best technology leaders across Europe who are prepared to give up their time, their expertise, stories and ideas in a way to bring the tech community together to inspire the next generation of software development professionals. Today, I'm delighted to be joined by Igor Mazor, who is the Senior Engineering Manager at Deloitte Consulting. Now, Deloitte Consulting are one of the world's largest consultancies, and I don't think that they need any introduction as to who they are as a business. Now, Igor has been involved in software engineering for the last 7 years, originally starting out as a data engineer after completing his master's degree back in Israel. He's then moved over to Berlin, where he's had a number of different data engineering positions, all the way up to lead engineer position, and more recently, over the last couple of years, has been leading teams, managing projects, as well as teams at Deloitte Consulting. So Igor, I'm really excited to have you on the podcast today. How are you doing?
Hey David, thanks. I'm doing fine. Everything is wonderful. Sitting at home with the corona.
Cool.
How are you?
I'm really well. So I usually start the podcast off by just asking yourself really to give the listeners a bit of an introduction to yourself, how you started off in software engineering and how you've progressed your career through to an engineering leader.
Well, honestly, I always want to be a data scientist, but eventually ended up more in the data engineering. Actually, one of my first roles were in the data analytical space, and then I joined Rocket Internet. But the tasks were more data engineering oriented, a lot of focus around business intelligence, and I actually really liked it, and I was able to move quite fast forward from junior to senior. And after a few years at Rocket, I was feeling that I'm a bit tired from the startup environments, and I wanted to try a bit more the big tech companies. So I had a great opportunity joining to eBay, specifically Mobile.de, which is part of eBay Classifieds group. And I joined the data team over there to take the lead on building real-time data products, a lot of data streaming. I even gave a few talks as part of eBay Tech Talk and Berlin Buzzwords conferences, focusing on user search, user profile, recommendations. And yes, and then eventually, after being a tech lead, engineering lead, I also decided that I want to grow and mentor and coach engineers, not only from the technical perspective. Mm-hmm. And I had a great opportunity joining Deloitte as a manager, where I had more possibility and opportunities to grow my also soft skills, not only tech skills. Yeah. Leading teams and projects, and I'm really happy there, and I think that I learn and still learn quite a lot.
Fantastic. So how what made you want to be a leader, I suppose? Has that always been with you? Have you always kind of seen a path for yourself that you wanted to go down the management route, I suppose, or did it just kind of come naturally, really?
Well, I can say about myself that I am quite a pragmatic person, and usually I try to think a few steps ahead and to plan my future ahead. Well, not always it's possible if we speak about this year, for example, with the COVID situation. But I do try it, and I knew at some point I do want to go more to the leading position of leadership. But since it was in the technology sector, I also knew that I first want to get a solid experience in engineering as hands-on. Because I truly believe that a leader has to understand the team challenges and what the team members speaking about, what kind of problems they deal with, and not only try to give them advice how to grow their career, but when you know the technology, you can also give a better advice. Yeah. So for me, it was first really important to establish those engineering fundamentals before I can move to my leadership skills.
Okay. What's been the biggest challenge for you with making that transition over from an engineer who's been maybe focused very much on coding and engineering side to then have to flip that completely into, management, people, and the strategic element of the role?
So I found two major challenges that I had to deal with and actually still have to deal with. The first one, not surprisingly, it's the people themselves. So comparing people to code, it's probably like apples and oranges. When you're an engineer and you develop a code, you usually know what is your input, you know what's supposed to be the expected output, and if something fails in the way, in the middle, you try to find what to fix. You can try to fix it, usually it works. So basically, then the output is deterministic. With people, however, it's not easy when you get the same input. The output can be different if you speak with different people, because each person has its own character, its own understanding and conception of the world, and he reacts differently. And with people, it's a bit dangerous and not that straightforward to experiment as well, like with the code. If you push on the wrong button, if you use the wrong variable, it can lead to really bad situations that not always fixable. You cannot do git revert, right?
Exactly right. So how let's kind of dive into your experience then at Deloitte Consulting, because I know that that's the main kind of crux of your experience from a management perspective. I know that you'd had kind of lead engineer positions where you'd been leading projects from a technical side, but this is where kind of your people management and strategic element has very much kind of kicked off over the last few years. So kind of tell us about your role there and what you're responsible for.
So currently, I have a responsibility for multiple teams that are delivering solutions to our clients, engineering solutions, data solutions to our clients on a variety of projects, and it's keep changing constantly. So at the moment, for example, I have quite a small team, but a really good team in one single really demanded project. In the past, I was basically leading 4 or 5 teams, up to 25 engineers, and sometimes even in parallel of 2-3 projects. When I lead my teams, I am not only responsible to make sure that they do everything on time, not only responsible to try to help them and improving themselves, but a lot of interaction with the client, a lot of interaction with different stakeholders, trying constantly to understand what is the client requirement, what is the business requirement, and even look behind, like even way behind what just the client said, because there could be more open points that he never thought about it. And actually, this is why at Deloitte we are good at what we do, because we try to go 1 step more, 2 steps more. At the same time, I still have also responsibility, usually as a lead architect, to make sure that we deliver the correct solution to the client, that we architecture using the right tools, the right technological approach, which can be integrated with the client business strategy, business requirements. And then, of course, the biggest challenge is to oversee the teams, if it's multiple teams or a single team, to make sure they understood the goals, they understood what they have to do, and supporting them on the way how to implement it, how to deliver high quality, to reduce any potential roadblocks that could occur during the project.
Yeah. What would you say, because you've worked in both product teams and also now in consultancy, what would you say is the main difference between the two?
That's an interesting question. So I think one main difference is a daily context switch. So usually when you work on a product, you focus on a specific product and you come each day to work and you know that you work on that product until you finish it, and then you start iteration for the next product.
Yeah.
In consultancy, especially on the manager level and above, usually the expectation that you take a lead on multiple projects, not only a single one. Scaling out yourself. And then I have situations where in a single day I have to speak about 2 or 3 different projects. I need to learn how to deal with a switch of the context and to be able to respond quickly. And honestly, I mean, I cannot say exactly client names that I work for, but I work at least for 2 automotive leaders in Germany. And it happens already that when I was speaking about an idea in front of one of them, I actually used the name of the other one.
Right.
And then
So,
they fixed me. You mean that brand that we are now? What I said? Oh yes, you're right.
yeah, that can be quite confusing.
Sorry, just to add to that. So this is one challenge, and second challenge, I think the difference is ownership. So I see that there are 2 different types of ownership. There is one ownership where you take responsibility for a problem which maybe you don't have to address, but you want to own that, and you want to show to the client that you're good at what you do. And as I explained previously, this is why Deloitte are really good at what they're doing, because we try to look forward, we try to go a step beyond what is expected from us. This one type of ownership. But the other problematic ownership is owning the product that you grow, owning your baby, growing it from diapers and see how it grows. And I see this sometimes really hard for my engineers, because we work on a client project. It can be from 2-3 months to 2 years, maybe sometimes more. But at the end, you don't own that product. You not always will see it grow until the end. You maybe start to work on that as an MVP, and eventually, because of financial situation or different client decisions, they hire internal team. Somebody else will continue on that, and you will never see how it end up. And that is really tough, because this can affect strongly on the motivation of engineers.
Yeah.
And it can affect strongly on their approach of provide the best quality, because the thinking is always, well, it's temporary, 3-4 months, I'm not here, so why should I do the best, to give the best of myself and provide a better code, or make a bit different, deeper search and understanding how to come up with a better solution.
Yeah. How do you ensure that doesn't happen, I suppose, and that your engineers are motivated to give the best and create the best solution possible for the client? Because I do get what you say, and I hear it from engineers all the time that particularly ones that are working for MSPs or for consultancies, that they ultimately do a job, and even contractors to a certain extent, when they go in for 6 to 12 months, they do a piece of work and then they don't see the end result of the work that they've done, and that's why maybe people get attracted back to kind of a product-based business, because that's you're constantly working on that. You can see the fruits of your labor of what you've been doing. So how do you keep your team motivated to make sure that they are producing the very best work every time?
Well, that's quite easy. I just tell them, if you don't do your best, I don't give you the bonus.
It's nice and easy then.
But no, seriously. First, what I try is always to encourage them share their knowledge. I think when you work on something, whether it's small or big, whether it's eventually succeed or failed, most important is to share what you tried to do, what you tried to achieve, so others can learn, but also so you can be proud of what you do. It's extremely important to be proud of what you're doing. This gives you self-fulfillment, right? So this is one thing that I'm trying to do with my engineers, to encourage them share knowledge in different opportunities. Whether it's inside the project or across Deloitte. Then I, by myself, usually try to find a good blog post. Sometimes it's on intention, sometimes I just read it by chance because of different newsletters that I'm getting. So I always try to share it with them and to let them understand how they can use this technology, what other cool stuff can be done with what we're currently doing. And the last one, the most important, is always trying to help them understand the business impact on the client and what kind of awesome thing we will be able to achieve for the client if the solutions that we build will succeed. And usually to do it, especially if I, for example, notice that there is an engineer in the team that's struggling a bit to understand what is our goal, I try to take him aside, at least back in the good days when I could still be in the office. Now it's a bit challenging. We're going to the whiteboard and I'm trying to completely sketch the system architecture or the flow or the diagram from scratch, and on the way also to allow him asking questions and to have like more a dialogue, so he can understand better the motivation and the goal of what we're doing.
Yeah. Are all of the teams that you work with, you know, when you've got different projects, I'm assuming that the people that you're managing are changing on a project by project basis as well?
Yeah, so people are changing, people keep coming and going. I remember in one of the projects where I was leading 4 teams, right, 25 developers spread across Europe in 5 countries. There was one period was completely crazy because somebody left the company, somebody was sick, somebody moved to another project. We have teams that suddenly reduced 50% with resources, and we had to basically, until some degree, you know, improvise. So many things that manager always have a solution. Manager always know what to do. But you know, I served in Israeli in the military for 3 years in combat unit, and we used to say, although in Israel it's in Hebrew it sounds better, we used to say a good soldier is the one that know how to improvise. I think in management it's the same. Sometimes you just have to find workarounds. Sometimes it comes easy because of experience. Sometimes you learn on the fly. But in consultancy, this is also definitely one of the challenges, that you work with different people, and until you learn already to get to know your team. Now suddenly there is a new project, a new team, new problems, but this is also part of the challenge and the fun, because at least with code you can learn new things, but I think at some point you become an expert and maybe your learning curve is somewhere stopped. With people, you keep getting new surprises always, so there is always what to learn, and I like it. I really like it.
Yeah, no two people are exactly the same, are they? Yeah. So from a, I know that everyone's been impacted to a certain extent over the, you know, some more than others over the last kind of 8 months or so with what's going on with COVID. Because you're constantly dealing with new projects and you've got teams all across Europe, I imagine that you've been used to working remotely, you know, and managing your teams from a remote setting a lot of the time anyway. Have you been impacted a lot, if anything, over the last 8 months?
Impact, you mean business wise, or the working mode?
In terms of the way, from a business and from the way in which you manage your teams and projects, really.
So honestly, not much, because as I mentioned, even before the corona, we had a lot of teams that work remotely, and the situation of working remotely is okay for us inside Deloitte, right? But with the client is a bit more challenging, and we had to adapt ourselves and give a more series of training and guidelines how to create a good presentation in remote mode. I give you even one personal example. I had to create a presentation for some case, and then somebody helped me to review it. And of course, I used, you know, big fonts and everything so it can be seen good. Because I remember, you know, you presented on the screen on this white panel, and you want to make sure that everything is readable. But then I got the advice from a UX expert that, well, you present it on the screen, you don't really need to use font 18. It will be actually then too big and too shouting to the eyes. You should use font 12. And I was thinking for the moment, oh, really? This is a really small thing you don't think about, but this is important. So we're trying to get used to it. So I think most of the challenge working remotely is actually with the clients, less inside Deloitte, because we used to that already. But slowly the client adapted as well, and actually now we see that it works quite well. Of course, the human interaction is still missing, to me at least, for sure. I still believe that in some situations it's way easier to just come, meet, drink coffee, and draw something on the whiteboard, explain, and have an iteration about it, rather than in this kind of cold, distance environment. I sometimes tend to believe that also when you more meet with people, it's enough that even you touch a bit on the shoulder, you already get a bit more commitment from the person, and he feels a bit more that he has to do something better, rather when you sit in front of the screen, it's like messaging. Sometimes it's easier to express hard stuff in messaging rather than face to face.
Yeah, I fully agree.
Some years ago, I was hearing about virtual reality, how it's going to change our life, and I saw some solutions where you wear the glasses and you are like everybody in some virtual room. Where it is now, I mean, where all of those promises? My wife asked me a few days ago. So now finally, this working mode remotely, there is a lot of technological development. So not really. It's still the same Zoom and the same Teams, maybe in better quality, but the idea is still the same. I'm waiting for really better change.
So in 12 months' time, you can probably see everybody sat at home with the VR glasses on in some virtual, all having a meeting, sat around the table, drinking coffee as if they're there.
One thing, by the way, just to add to that, is that this human interaction, at least I can say on myself, when I sit too long by myself at home, I feel a bit disconnected from the rest of my office, from the rest of what's happening, and I think it sometimes can lead to not to nice situations, right? You can be demotivated, and it can be really hard. So I do my best from time to time to call randomly for engineers in our unit, not necessarily people in my team, just to ping, hey, how are you? How your project? Are you happy? To keep some kind of humanity in all of this strange environment.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of positives to working from home and working remotely. Your work-life balance. I know you've got small children. I've got two little girls myself. Seeing them a lot more, it's obviously a massive benefit. But there are downsides to working from home completely, where it does affect your mental health, and you can become a little bit isolated, and it's a lot harder to communicate in some instances with some people in your team, where sometimes you could just nip into the kitchen and just have a quick catch up with somebody, and then it's done. Over remote and on video, it can you have to book it in maybe half an hour in advance, and then it's much of a scheduled thing where it could just be done in a really quick instance, and everyone feels a little bit more uplifted and motivated, etc. So there's definitely
I also realized that my colleagues starting to invite me for meetings, which usually I have my lunchtime during, because my calendar is free. So it doesn't mean that, and I'm working from home, doesn't mean I don't need to eat. So at some point of time, I started to be strict, and I started to block my calendar in specific periods of the day for lunch, because otherwise my schedule was completely crazy. I was eating breakfast and lunch in front of the laptop. I think it's really not healthy.
No.
So planning your schedule becomes difficult. Same working with team members, right? In the office, I have a problem. I can come to somebody and disturb him a bit, because I'm a manager, and ask him to answer me on some questions, support me to clarify something. Now I ping somebody in Teams. Maybe he answer, maybe not. Maybe he's busy with his child, and I cannot call him. Hey, why he didn't answer me in 2 minutes? This is not my style. I don't believe in that. I don't believe in managing. I believe in leading. So, I have to be more patient, and this is tough.
Well, especially if you've got deadlines and you need to, like I say, it's a lot easier to do it if you're in the office and you can just walk over. That it can be done there and then. But remotely, it can be quite challenging from that side of things. Where do you see it in the next kind of 12, 18 months? As more and more businesses adapt to a remote model, and there's a number of businesses, pretty large businesses, the likes of Twitter, etc., who are saying they're completely remote now. They're not going back in the office, and that's it. where do you kind of see it in the next 18 months from a remote to working in the office perspective?
I think eventually it will be more freedom. Employees, I guess, would be able to choose more where they want to work. Regarding working hours, I still think it will stay in some limited boundary. But yeah, I believe that there will be more move to this kind of remote working mode. Actually, what I am wondering how it will affect the consultancy business. So the consultancy, I mean, business will stay, but major part of consultancy is traveling, right? It's client on site.
Yeah.
Now that the client realizes that remote works fine as well, I think a lot of cost savings can be done. However, I think it's not going to be healthy for the hospitality industry, like for hotels and for flight companies, because at least even in the USA, I know Deloitte is quite huge, and I think Deloitte by themselves has like a big percentage of the incomes of those industries.
Yeah, I can imagine.
So I'm really wondering how this will be reflected. I believe if the organizations, maybe in Germany, at least the more traditional organizations, we will make a more step forward and we'll be fine accepting also only English-speaking employees. They can even find way more opportunities generally and find good employees for their services. And that's not easy, right? A lot of the enterprises we work with, still a lot of documentation, a lot of the management, which is already, well, let's admit it, not that young, are more prefer the German, and I think it's fine. It's a mother language, you understand better, and but I can tell you, and you are working in the recruiting business, I can tell you that we are looking, for example, from time to time for freelancers for our projects as well.
Yep.
And at the moment, it's extremely hard because I've been told, at least with the agencies we work with, that now all the organizations accept remote working, and even in Germany, some of them willing to accept English without German, and the market is completely exploding. Yep. So candidates can select easily 3-4 options, what they like, and it's not easy. Yeah.
Yeah, so it makes it harder from a hiring perspective as well. So yeah, the knock-on effect I think is going to be massive, and I think there's going to be a massive change over the next 18 months. But I think you're right, there is going to be more of a hybrid mode as opposed to just one or the other. I don't think any business, if somebody said now that once the pandemic's over, they're going to be 100% working in the office, I think 3/4 of their engineers would leave.
Yeah.
You know,
but you know what is the most interesting part? I am curious to see how job advertisements of startups will change, because you know in the benefits usually there is we have fruits, we have tennis and all that. Now who cares? Would you send me the fruits home? What I will do?
Yeah, you're gonna send it home in a little package every week. Here's you.
So they have to find now new benefits quite fast.
Yeah, absolutely. Fair play. All right, cool. Well, finally, I suppose I always ask this question to everybody, because there'll be people here who are obviously looking to make that transition into a leader. So if there was one piece of advice that you'd give to somebody who's looking to make that transition into a tech leader in the future, what would it be?
Into tech lead, or you mean
into management, into tech engineering management? Yeah.
What I think would be the most useful. So I think the most useful, work on your communication skills and speak loud. I think this is what makes the biggest difference between a leader and I call it non-leader. Speak loud, say what you think in a polite manner.
Yeah.
But if you're afraid to express your opinion, nobody will hear you. And in many cases, I have a lot of engineers that have excellent questions, but either they're shy or embarrassing to ask them. And I think asking questions is extremely important. Challenging the other party with who you speak is extremely important. So don't shy, be loud, be bold.
Brilliant. Brilliant. Cool. All right. Perfect. Well, thank you very much, Igor. It's been really good speaking to you and getting to know you, and there's been some really insightful things there that you've uncovered, particularly about the consulting world, so I really appreciate that. Thanks everybody for listening. I hope you've enjoyed it as much as I have. If you can, and if you do like it, can you share the podcast with your friends, colleagues, and work colleagues as well, and we'll also see you on the next episode. Thanks very much.
Thank you, David.